Want to see what Dee Kei and Lu look like? Or want to watch our online video tutorials? Go to mixingmusicpodcast.com to find a link to our YouTube channel where we post live streams, online tutorials, and even our weekly podcast episode videos. Again, go to mixingmusicpodcast.com/links.
One, two, three.
Hello and welcome back to the Mixing Music Podcast. I'm your host, Dee Kei, and with me, as always, is my lovely co-host, Lu Xan.
I'll take it. You know what? I still play Yu-Gi-Oh! I play it in between bounces.
Yeah, you do, and I saw it one time. Like, you left your PlayStation, your PS4 on.
Yep.
And we came into the studio when you left it on, and we're like, what's this? It was in the pause menu, and we went back, and you're like, wait, this is Yu-Gi-Oh!
Yep. I'm just as much a Yu-Gi-Oh! Fan as I am a Pokemon fan.
There you go. That's incredible. I remember when we used to pretend like we know how to play Yu-Gi-Oh! And just traded cards and make up rules on the spot in elementary school, middle school. But yeah, today's a good episode. We're excited to talk about this one because it's a very important one. We're going to talk about the importance of, or like tips and tricks when mixing your own songs. Yeah. Either you recorded them yourself or you're the artist and you've somehow taken on the task of recording. Sometimes it's inevitable, as in like this is how you always do it. It's cost efficient, or I don't know, whatever reason it may be. I think that
you're a perfectionist.
Yeah, you're just a perfectionist. Whatever it is, there's recently, I mean, this happens all the time when people send me some feedback or mixes for feedback, or clients, and they mix themselves. And like, I work with a couple producers, right? And they send me a couple songs to mix, and one of them is their own, and the other one is for somebody else. And oftentimes, when I'm able to listen to both, songs that they've mixed for somebody else sound dramatically better than the songs that they mix from themselves for themselves. It's this weird phenomenon that we have. And we continue to, we have this growing need for doing our own mixes to save costs as the industry becomes much more competitive. But there's this huge divide in kind of our quality and our trust when we mix our own stuff. There's this phenomenon that goes on. So today we're going to address that and talk about tips and tricks to kind of overcome that and help get better mixes when you're mixing your own stuff. And do you think, I think some people will say, if at all possible, do never mix your own music. But honestly speaking, as far as like efficiency goes and as far as business goes, if you do it yourself, you don't have to wait for anybody else. But I think that doing it yourself is definitely a different skill than for mixing for somebody else.
And we're talking about a conscious skill versus you have better hearing skill. Because I feel like the biggest reason that a lot of people, not that they shouldn't mix themselves, but it's because we're too far up our own,
Say it.
Damn it. We're too far up our own ass when it comes to thinking that we know what's best for our sound, and that we're not willing to take outside opinion in. And how many times have you gone on a record to like do some light touch mixing, like just clean it up, make it sound better, and then you listen to it and you're like, wow, that sounds terrible. And they're like, yeah, I mixed it to 95%. I just need you to give it that extra 5%, but that extra 5% they think they're going to get is actually like, bro, you're only at like 30%. Like, do you want me to just completely mix this?
Yeah,
like,
and I think
you're so far off the map that like, if I do give you a dramatically different mix, you might reject it out of demo-itis.
So I would say that there's three scenarios, and I'm going to title them before I move on and describe them. First scenario is you love everything too much. Like you love your song too much, and the production too much. The second thing is demo-itis, where you're really torn on the demo. And the last thing is often, you're too conservative. So let's go with the first one, which is you love your production too much. This is a common example that I see. A good mix does not allow everything to be heard at all times. That is a boring mix. It is not good. A great mix is like a magician working his magic. They're kind of distracting you with a set of sounds over here while slowly introducing something over here. When there's a little bass riff that goes on, maybe you drop everything else and raise the bass. You automate the volumes, you let things shine, and you let specific parts of the production shine more than others constantly, and you change it up constantly throughout the mix.
Let me ask you, would you say that's more of a mix decision when mixing your own records or overall? Because I feel like that's also a production decision.
It is definitely a production thing.
Yeah.
I would say that this is more of a problem in like rock bands.
Yeah.
Where it's like songwriting and production is big, but like in hip hop, the kick drum for the chorus is oftentimes a totally different track and sample than the kick drum in the verses. So I'm not saying that that's right, but I am saying that production and arrangement is a lot more flexible in hip hop modern pop stuff than it is for a band. The band, it's like the only thing you can do is play louder or not play at all. Like so I think that this is more of a band scenario, right? You love everything too much. And this also goes into play the second point, which is demoitis. Can you explain what demoitis is, Lou?
Have you ever had a record that you've been holding on to for, let's say, not even years? You just had it for a week. You listen to it over and over and over and over again to the point where it's so ingrained in you that you love the record that any type of alteration to the record is always already a negative effect. No matter if it's going in the right direction or if it's going left, it is seen as an equally bad move. You're so in love with where the production stands and the feel that you got from it that you're just not willing to listen to a new version of it, whether it be better or worse.
You've lost objectivity completely.
Exactly. We're too far up our own you-know-who.
So I think that this is often common for any artist. I would say this is more on the artist, and this is not a genre-specific or instrumentation-specific thing.
This is just human nature.
And this is why labels make such a big deal of keeping the master record. For example, for anybody that's complained about getting swindled out of records and stuff, at any given point, they're allowed to record their same exact songs, but re-record them and create a new master record. The reason why that it's not as popular, and every single time a remastered or a remixed version of a song is not as popular as the original, is because tones create a specific memory, spark a specific memory. So when someone gets really attached as a consumer to the original master recording, and then they re-release Earth, Wind & Fire's September to up to more modern standards, people are going to hate that version of September and say that the original is better, even though it's technically inferior. And it's because it's a memory. So the last thing that you should do, if you create your own art, and you have to do this to a certain degree, maybe not have to. In fact, I'm going to take back what I said completely. I don't think you have to, and I don't think you should. A lot of artists love to critique themselves and listen to their own demo or their own songs 100 times and try to nitpick every single small little thing. I would say part of this is kind of a little bit of a narcissistic tendency. It's kind of like, but it's also like for good reason too. You're trying to critique yourself. But I'm going to tell you right now, you're losing objectivity every single time. Objectivity every single time you listen to it. And it's not going to be good if you're hiring someone out or if you're trying to mix your own record. So to prevent this issue, we recommend, and Lou talked about, I said, at least wait till you mix a song. Give it 24 hours since the last time you heard it to mix it.
I said give it a week if timeline is not an issue. If you just recorded the song today and you don't even have a set date
and you're listening to it every day, give it, if you can, like a few days or a week since the last time that you listened to it.
You'd be surprised. Half the time you might be like, I could have made that take better. Or, you know what? I really need to clean up the mid-range and the vocals. Like, now that I heard it compared to all the other records I love, and I came back to this one with fresh ears, I'm not so in love with the sound of it.
And I think that this is again, the reason why it's important that it's since the last time you listened to it is because if you recorded and produced it and finished it, bounced the demo, and you've been listening to the track every single day, even if it's not on your studio monitors, you've been listening to the track every single day, and then even that morning when you're getting ready to mix the track because it's been a week, and you've been listening to that song that morning, you've lost all objectivity. Like, it's got to be a week. You kind of have to forget about the song and kind of totally reset. But at the bare minimum, I think I love waiting full 24 hours and not listening to it. And you know what? It's way easier to not listen to a track and reset if it's not your own music. I don't listen to my client's music most of the time outside of the studio. So that's why it's a little bit easier, and that's why part of the reason why. Same thing with the earlier thing about loving your production too much, and getting. This is another thing too. Take a break. Don't listen to it. I think that's a huge thing. And the third topic that I want to go over is the idea of being too conservative. Oftentimes, when you mix your own records, since you've lost objectivity and you care too much, you are emotionally attached to this baby, this idea baby of yours, that you're no longer experimenting and trying things and going to the extremes of things, where now how your EQ looks and how crazy it looks is going to affect you much more than if you're mixing for somebody else. If you're mixing for somebody else, how your EQ looks and what your meters are running are not going to phase you half as much as if it's your own baby. So this is part of demo-itis, as Lou said, as Lou was saying off mic. I think that this is a big deal. And this is one of the main reasons why sometimes it's better to really just take a week off, get back to it, or hire someone else to do it. Because
even if you want them to provide you with final stems at the end of it, you know what I mean? Like, at the very least, you could get an external opinion, have them do what they think is going to be best, and have them send you the session back. That way you still have control over it, but at least somebody gave you an honest third-person view on the sound of it.
Yeah. And most importantly, if you're asking for feedback, a couple things. Make sure you ask the right person for feedback.
Yep.
There's two types of people that you want to ask. One, a consumer, someone like a friend, a girlfriend, a boyfriend, a spouse, whatever, someone that's not really a professional.
Your pet.
And if you ask a professional for feedback, the last person that you want to ask is someone whose mixes you don't like.
Yeah.
And I won't say you should ask someone who's better than you, because that's also subjective. But make sure you ask someone whose mixes you like. And don't ask them just because they're a friend in the industry. And if you don't know their mixes, they probably have a portfolio. Go look it up. If they don't have a portfolio, then I would say that they're too inexperienced to give proper technical feedback.
To be honest, personal recommendation, ask somebody you don't know who has no emotional tie to you. Because if, I think I made a post about this either today or yesterday, damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you know somebody, generally you're trying to be polite and you're not trying to hurt their feelings too much. But if you have no emotional attachment to somebody, it's a lot easier for you to just be brutally honest. And sometimes that's all we need to hear. Like, if it was a bad recording, I want you to know it was a bad recording. If it's a great recording, I'm going to let you know it's a great recording. But the reality is, I don't want to spare your feelings, or else I'm not giving you the information you honestly asked me for.
So on that note, like, in all of this, to be honest, the more we think about it, the more we talk about it, all 3 points, the idea of trying to have everything heard at once and not being able to have that bias or that objectivity to let things be less heard, right? And the second point was demo-itis, like getting too super attached to losing out. Third is
being too conservative.
Being too conservative. Like, these are all things that can be negated with time.
Yep.
Truly time. And I would say that this is a big problem with independent artists. I don't know why this is a thing, and I think I can guess why, because we're human.
Know why.
Humans, like, this happens all the time. We finish a record, we mix it, and before they have any sort of revisions, or even before they even approve of the mix, they've already put it on DistroKid. They've already put it online and scheduled it out. This is a bad idea. What you want to do is I mean, forget the marketing part, right? Where you spend time to actually give love, tender love and care to a record, and hype it up before. Forget that part. I'm talking about the production. I'm talking about the mixing. Like, you got to give it time, and if you give it too much time, that's bad as well. Like, you don't want to just sit on it, but at the same time, sitting on it is especially worse if you've been listening to it every single day and you keep sitting on it. But what you don't want to do is all of a sudden just release it, no willy-nilly, and once you put it out, like, you could take it down again, but if the bigger the artist you are, the more potential damage that does as well.
Oh yeah.
So just take the time. That's all you could really do, and let it refresh, give it a week. I love, because I mix my own records all the time, so I do a lot of songwriting and production, and for these label cats, right? And when I do this, I'm also an engineer by trade, so I record myself and my vocals, and I mix myself and my vocals, and I've gotten a lot better over the years of doing it myself. But if I had the time to, and I take a few days off or a week off and come back to it, I can mix my own voice a lot more subjectively.
Oh yeah, I was listening to old mixes of mine from my old band, and not all of us have to be the loudest thing in the mix.
That is the biggest thing. Also, if your drummer doesn't know how to play quietly or plays too loud, fire them immediately, because that will save you years of pain and tears and agony.
I hate to admit this, but in the past, we did have the engineer play the drums on a song after the drummer recorded.
Really?
Yes,
Was it because of his?
Not my proudest historic moment.
Is it his engineers? Who said it?
So we were all friends, and he didn't hear the record until we played it on radio at an interview that we were at for radio. So as we were listening to it, he noticed something was off. And then he noticed it wasn't him on the record.
Oh.
Not my proudest moment, and I wholeheartedly
was the new drums better?
regret that.
Was it the new drums better, though, subjectively?
Yes, absolutely. For the record, the
I don't drum this good.
End result was better, but emotionally speaking, I felt like that was a dark day.
And if you think about it from a professional standpoint.
No, professional standpoint, the record actually benefited from it. Just when you start getting too attached.
But when you're friends and you're doing it as a hobby and it's all about being friends.
Yeah, and then
and less
the
about
record
the music,
suffers.
Yeah.
But then that's why I say it was as a friend, it was a dark day.
Yeah, in the professional industry, that's normal. If you don't perform, then you're getting kicked out.
You know how common it is to have people it's weird. I talked to somebody who said they had 7 different features to choose from for their single release. And that wasn't weird at all. I was yeah, everybody got cashed out? Yeah. So we just had to choose which one we want, and we'll just reproduce new beats for these features we already paid for. And it's okay, so literally if one feature that you thought was going to pan out wasn't great, you don't just put out the one that wasn't great. You say, all right, fuck it, well, let's give this other person a try. Oh, that feature is amazing, but still not fully the vibe. And if you're not talking budgets, let's say you're talking about people in the industry you meet on Instagram, and be like, hey, can you get 16 bars onto my record, and they really like you, it's okay to not use those 16 bars if it's going to degrade the quality of your record.
Absolutely. And I would say that this is human nature, but oftentimes if the choice is we ignore you and don't tell you that you're off, or we tell you sucked, it wasn't as good as we'd liked it to be, more often than not, unfortunately, humans will not say anything. They won't say that they didn't like it. But that's honestly also, it might partially reflect who you are as a person, because if I don't want to disappoint you, or if I really like you, and I know that you cannot handle that I said, you're not as good, which is mostly younger cats.
Yeah.
Then I'm just going to lie. Well, granted, I'm working on not lying and being a lot more honest with myself, so I won't. I'd love to be direct. I think that's very important. But in the industry, you'll see that happen a lot, especially among the younger cats. Older
especially
cats,
when it comes to money.
Yeah, and more professional people, I would say, tend to be better about this.
Yeah.
But I don't know any independent artists that do a feature and then tell the artist directly, yeah, I didn't like that too much. They either release it anyway,
or they don't release it at all.
Yeah. And no, that's not how the industry goes. Just find somebody else.
Especially when it comes to there's money on the table and people are investing a certain dollar amount in hopes of getting a return. If the product isn't as good as they were hoping it to be, they're going to make the modifications necessary to essentially try to ensure a return on their product.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is very important. Again, going back to the major topic here, we kind of covered it many times over. I don't want to say I do not recommend that you mix your own records, because oftentimes that is much more efficient and it's a lot more feasible for budgets.
We're just trying to say,
if you have the budget for mixing, then definitely you're getting paid for not just the technical mixing skill, but you're paying them for their objectivity.
Oh yeah,
and an objectivity that you can trust.
Oh yeah,
not just some random person's objectivity. So like,
oh yeah,
my biased objectivity versus your biased objectivity.
It's like
two
let's see who
oxymoron,
wins.
like oxymoron right there. But like for real though, like I would say that's a big part of it. So take time on your records, and by time I mean don't make the process slower. Take a break.
Yeah,
take a break. Make the process as fast as possible.
You don't have to release it tomorrow if you didn't plan on releasing anything tomorrow. Like,
Amen.
Realistically, if just because it's a good record doesn't mean you have to release it like tomorrow.
Final rant. I swear on my life, and I don't have any issues. I don't have any issues with this now. Nobody has ever given me grief about this because I'm much more advanced in my career. Most people that I work with are also a little bit more advanced in their career. But I swear on my life, dog, that if you say I can't move it back, I'm in a rush time because I've already told my fans that we're going to release it on this day, and you use that as an excuse to rush me, I will come over and Chinese water torture you and not let you sleep for 4 days straight, and I will not give you your revisions back on time. I will not. I will, as a matter of principle, if you rush me because your fans are waiting and you have 12 monthly listeners on Spotify, I will not give you your track and I will charge you more. That is how that works. I will say, oh, there's a rush fee involved.
Typically speaking, I do charge a rush fee if they need it within the same week. The funny thing is people forget, like if you're trusting a professional to do something, the reason that they're a professional is because they have clients who pay them to get these things done. And that typically means that there's deadlines and everything on the table. So your deadline being more important than the current client means that you're going to have to pay more for that importance, that urgency. But if you're hitting up your engineer saying, I need this in 2 days, hey, I'm just saying, objectively speaking, I'm the kind of engineer that likes to finish the mix and then not turn it in
and
until the next
day
after I listened to it with fresh ears and said, wow, that was shit. Let me correct what I thought was shit.
The more time you give an engineer, the better it's going to sound.
Yeah, all the time. It's not that they're trying to literally delay you and you have to pay for whatever time.
Not always. Hold on. I take back what I said. It's not a blanket statement that works always, because there's many times where I get a mix and I say, hey, it's going to take 3 weeks of turnaround time. And I don't even touch it until the 2.5 weeks in.
No, that makes sense. But like, you know, I was talking about it today with Young, your engineer with Altonesia. And like, she's like, oh, I like how you have all your stuff written in your notebook. I'm like, yeah, I have 4 songs to mix today. I have 5 to master, and I had to send out revisions for 2. Like, we have way too much on our table for you to rush your engineer for your deadlines that you did not communicate in advance without understanding that you're going to be charged a rush fee.
And I'm not trying to do this to flex, but I do want to talk about practically here. And I'm sure that you could count. How many mixes are you deeper? Masters, mixes, songs are you behind right now? Like
about 27.
Okay.
And not, I wouldn't say right behind, but there's people that have been waiting like 3-4 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, on track. And for me, I have about the same. I actually might have I have an 11-song album that I haven't even started.
Yeah.
I have a 12-song album that needs to be finished up. I have another 12-song album that I haven't even started. And then on top of that, I have a single that I'm hoping to knock out tonight during the live stream because we're recording on Monday. Yeah. You're going to wait a week. You're going to wait a little while. And And this is partially why we keep raising our prices as well, is to try to minimize the wait.
It's kind of funny because it's not necessarily lost on people, the idea of supply and demand, but the busier we get, it's not like we're going to keep dropping our prices. It's actually quite the opposite, unless we can find a whole system to back it up with, at which point we may be able to. But mixing is not one of those things where you can help out 20 people at the same time, unless you got 20 engineers working on different mixes at the same time. With that said, that's something that you could possibly scale as a company down the line, but not as an individual mix engineer. So because of this, if your engineer has 2 albums to work on and your single needs to come out and it's urgent, you need to communicate it in advance, let us know deadlines, let us know expectations, give us the reference tracks, do everything that you can to put us in the know, so that once we receive the track and you say, hey, it's go time, urgency price rate has been paid and this and that, well, let's go. There's not a lot of back and forth communication of like, oh, well, this is what I wanted it to sound like. It's like, you should have told me that in advance before we wasted time.
Yeah.
There's a, I guess you could say, a whole protocol behind the urgency side of things. But realistically speaking, if you're mixing your own stuff, the greatest thing is that you have time. You're not waiting on anybody. You're not being delayed by anybody. It's all in your own hands. But because it's all in your own hands, you have to give yourself the same space that you'd give your engineer. If your engineer says, well, I'd like to listen to the reference first a few times and then jump in with mine. But if you're stuck on your demo sound, like we were saying, it's the whole vibe thing, we fell in love with it, then you've lost objectivity and it's only going to hurt your record. I
like that as the kind of the golden rule of thumb about this. When mixing your own record, I really like a week. Mm-hmm. I really like a week. If you have time to wait a week, which every independent artist does.
Yes. If you're releasing songs every week, that might be the case for the first few weeks. Maybe you come up with 1 song a week, but Macon had songs that were like 2 months in advance in production. Like he said, he had songs that he could wait to mix and everything because he already had other songs in the queue. Maybe if you don't have songs in the queue, I get it. But if you got songs in the queue, you have time to wait.
Yeah. So I think if you have time, give it a week. And don't listen to the demo for a week. Kind of let it be totally subjective. Forget about it. Leave it in your calendar and let your calendar remind you that you had another song that you were supposed to finish.
Listen to Mixing Music Podcast for a week. Listen to Outdonesia's podcast for a week.
There you go. It's not out yet, so we can't say that yet.
What? No. Oh.
But it'll come out. It'll come out.
Okay.
We have a new podcast that we're working on that me and some other friends are hosting. It's more general. It's music history, music reviews. So it's not as specific about 4 producers and mixers. We're really excited for it. But yeah, it's Lu's featured on it as well in the first few episodes. But
That's going to be a fun episode.
Yeah. So on that note, I think this is the perfect time to talk about our sponsor for the podcast. We're really grateful and thankful for our sponsor, Izotope, who has been sponsoring our podcast now for almost 6 months, for a while now. We're really grateful for Izotope. If you go to izotope.com/MMPodcast, you'll find a 10% off gift code, a code for 10% off, or your first month free for their monthly production bundle, their monthly system that they have, which is really great. We use Izotope products on every single one of our mixes and our masters and our productions. I've seen everybody uses it, and they're a very world-renowned, highly regarded plugin company, obviously because they have enough money to sponsor us. So if they're doing that well, I mean, there's a reason for it.
Yeah. You don't exactly get a marketing budget if you're doing terribly.
Yeah, there you go. And I don't know if they'd like us talking about this stuff, but for real, though, like there is definite bias, and we definitely love their stuff.
How about this? Just try Ozone and then call me later. And if you don't like it, you can yell at me for 2 minutes straight, uninterrupted.
I'm going to take you up on a Lou.
Okay, good.
I'm just going to yell at you for 2 minutes straight. I'm going to complain.
You're just going to claim to complain.
I'm going to complain about how McDonald's ice cream machines are always broken. I'm going to just tell you for 2 minutes straight.
How the Sweetie burger is just a burger.
It's just a Big Mac, damn it! Like,
it's just altered. It's a custom order burger that they're like, you know what? That tasted okay. I guess we can mass produce that one. I guess.
So on that note, thank you so much for listening, everybody. If you're listening on Apple Music, please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It goes a long way. It really helps us to grow. We've been doing really well. We have tens of thousands of listeners every month, and we're so very grateful for all of your support.
Seriously, guys.
Over the time on this such a niche topic. And I'm really proud to be able to, me and Lou are just so proud to be able to be honored by having you, be honored by y'all that are listening right now. And we're grateful for Vintage King, who put out an email article
Shout
about
out to
us.
VK.
Yeah, who put out an email about us being one of the top podcasts listened to for music production. And we're gearing up for our next level of interviews and news. And we're getting a lot of your advice. We keep getting advice for trying to give more technical advice during the podcast. So we're trying to keep this around. If you have any topics that you like to share with us, go to mixingmusicpodcast.com, join our Discord through that website, or from our Instagram, either at my Instagram at DK Mixes or Lou at Midside Sound. Do you have the Discord for the Mixing Music Podcast on there?
I should. Yeah, I should.
Okay, we both should. And then if not, you can go to mine and join the Discord where there's a bunch of other people too, and we read those, and we get we do take in advice or some feedback from y'all, and we're really grateful. Thank you so much for listening to the Mixing Music Podcast. Happy mixing, my friends, and stay saucy.
1, 2, 3.
You've been trying to create content to help grow your personal brand and your business. Maybe you've decided to start a podcast. Well, now you're in luck. Visit mixingmusicpodcast.com and check out our official sponsor list, where you can find Spreaker, our hosting website that we use for our podcast, for your next podcast show. Click on that link and get a month free. You're welcome.